Hello, Internet. I am Pastor Recoil, and welcome to my parish. Today is the 13th Sunday after Pentecost, and we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Pastor Recoil's parish, where I talk about some things you may not have heard about in church, either because it's not quite appropriate for all audiences, or it just isn't something that's easy to talk about in a sermon. The readings for the 13th Sunday after Pentecost are Exodus 1:8 through 2:10, Psalm 124, Romans 12:1 through 8, and Matthew 16:13 through 20. We're going to talk about what being a Christian in the world really means. See, Romans 12 comes after the conclusion of Paul's argument about the salvation of Israel. We talked about that argument a few weeks ago, but here's the summary. God's mercy and love is so abundant that there is more than enough for everyone. There's so much mercy and love available that no matter what humans do or don't do, God is going to be merciful to everyone, everywhere, and every when. So Paul starts his argument here. So brothers and sisters, because of God's mercies, I encourage you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice that is holy and pleasing to God. This is your appropriate priestly service. Don't be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you can figure out what God's will is, what is good and pleasing and mature. What he's saying here is, since God is merciful to everyone, it is now the specific job of Christians to be priests, mediators between God and the world. Christians give our lives over to God so that we are different from the rest of the world. We bear witness to something that will happen in the future, a time that is breaking in through the resurrection of Jesus, and that is being prepared through Jesus' ascension and will come into being when Jesus returns. This is a time in which all of the problematic things of this world, sickness, hatred, pain, even death, will go away. It's a world in which all people are valued and loved for being human. It's a new kingdom in which Jesus is king, though not a king like the ones people are used to. He's a perfect king. Now, in our modern culture, we don't really get kingdoms and kings. The idea of Jesus as a king seems odd to us because of our own American cultural baggage about monarchies. But at the same time, I think this is what Paul is talking about when he says, don't be conformed to the patterns of this world. We all have biases from the culture that we live in. Some of these are more obvious than others, but we all have things that we seemingly naturally think are good and things that we think are bad. For instance, in many American churches, decisions are made by majority votes because we think as Americans that that's the best way to make decisions. But is it? There's a lot of decisions that have to be made that won't be the most popular. We can see with the return of populism in American politics that what a majority of people want to happen isn't always the best thing. And I can't tell you how many churches I've seen vote themselves out of existence because the majority refuses to see where God is leading them. That's just one small example, though. So much of the world in which we live permeates the way that we think church should be. I heard about a book that I haven't read yet, so I don't want to endorse it, but it argues that much of modern American evangelicalism is basically just a rehash of Victorian values, not biblical ones. Never mind that biblical values don't entirely exist. That's a whole different video, though, about how we create these things that we then call biblical. We are constantly being conformed to the patterns of the world in which we live. And that makes it all the more important to seek out the transformation that God provides. It's hard to know exactly when someone is transformed by God, but Paul gives some examples of the fruits, what a life transformed by God looks like. We'll get some of these next week and I'll go over them then, but here's the short version. Do you love one another as Christ loved you? Do you love your neighbor as yourself? Do you love God with everything you are? Do you serve one another, sharing what you have to help those in need? Do you amplify the voices of those whose voices are silenced? Do you speak against oppression? All of these things show that one is transformed to be a priest in the kingdom of God, one who proclaims the kingdom in all that they do. So if you want to see more content like this, check out the links to my right, or click the logo below my face to subscribe so you'll know when my next video comes out. Thank you for watching, and take the time this week to love your neighbor as yourself, especially if you don't like them all that much.